Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Athena Aftercare Live. As you all know, this morning we are going to be talking all things stone care. Before we get stuck into the presentation, I just want to thank everybody for the questions that they've submitted in advance. We're going to try and cover as many of these as possible throughout the presentation, and a few more at the end too. If you do have a burning question while we're talking, then please feel free to pop this in the chat bar. And my colleague Larissa will let me know about these at the end, and we'll try and answer as many as we can. Larissa is also going to be sharing a few links throughout, and we will send these to you at the end. Don't panic if you miss those. We'll also be recording the presentation to share with you later too. There is a lot to get through in 45 minutes, and so in the interest of time, we are keeping everyone muted throughout. But as I say, if you do have any questions, comments, or you're struggling to hear or see the screen, then just pop a little message in the chat bar and we will get onto that as soon as possible. So with all of the housekeeping covered, it's time to get into stone keeping. We'll start with a very brief introduction to Athena Stonecare. So as a company, we are specialists in restoring all natural stone surfaces that you would commonly use internally within a property. My husband Dave set up the company 10 years ago, and I've been working with him for the past 4 years to help grow us to a 5-strong team. We love natural stone. As a business, we've dedicated ourselves to caring for it, and it's this passion that we're really eager to share. Whether we've restored a 15-year-old limestone floor or rectified the etch marks caused by a spillage on a 6-month-old worktop, one of the questions that we are most commonly asked by clients is, how do I keep it looking like this now? There seems to be a real lack of information and guidance given to clients at the point when they first install stone to help them to get the most from it. In fact, a lot of the issues that we're called out to restore are the result of poor maintenance. We know that clients and contractors could love their stone for so much longer if they just knew how easy it was to care for. So last year, we pulled together our 10 years of tips on how to care for stone in our Athena Aftercare guide. And today, we're going to be bringing that to life. My aim today is not to convert everybody into using natural stone or sell it to you. We don't sell and we don't install natural stone. If you visit the Stone Hub at the Surface Design Show today, you'll get to see some stunning stone. And there's so many stone suppliers there who can tell you all sorts about specifying stone and a lot of the properties of stone as well. We just want to give you a bit of knowledge on some of the key considerations to make when you do work with stone. We'll be outlining a few facts and banishing a few misconceptions that can help you in turn to educate your clients too. We're going to start with a really quick look at some of the key properties of stone and why it is that it needs to be well looked after. And then we're going to go into some of the do's and don'ts, as well as some of the recommended cleaning regimes. And finally, we're just going to look at a few considerations to make that when you are specifying stone to make that maintenance even more straightforward. If you are visiting the Surface Design Show, then you're going to see so many different beautiful materials to work with, stone included as one of them. And I think one of the key things to bear in mind is that no matter what material you use for a project, there is always going to be a level of maintenance required. There's no such thing as a completely maintenance-free surface. So whether you encourage your clients to use natural stone or not, we just want to give you some of the facts and equip you with the knowledge so that when a client does want to use natural stone, you're more educated to help them to make the best choices possible. So it's an interesting concept of why natural stone needs special care. And I think it's worth noting that the properties that make stone so unique are the properties that can make it a little bit more vulnerable. And so before we look at the prevention and maintenance of common issues, it's worth understanding just a little bit more about the nature of stone. So one of the really key properties of stone that you need to be aware of is that natural stone is porous. Limestone is a really commonly used stone for flooring. It's a beautiful choice for flooring. And because it's so unique and there's so many different qualities to the stone, it's one that can be used in so many different settings. As a sedimentary rock, it's formed on a seabed where organic matter accumulates. And that's why you spot all of these gorgeous, stunning fossils throughout that give it that uniqueness and that beauty that everyone looks for. Different beds and different places that you get limestone will have differing porosity, but it is something that you need to be aware of and have a plan for. And we're going to come on to look at that in more detail. Likewise, formed in a similar way, sandstone is a porous stone, and as a product of limestone, marble is too. Travertine is slightly different because it's formed in hot springs. So as well as being porous, it is naturally pitted stone as well. These pits are usually filled at the point of purchase, but it is worth bearing in mind that it is quite a heavily pitted and porous stone too. The second thing to bear in mind is that not all natural stone is hard, and it's a really common misconception that it is. One of the first tests that we do when we go to site, when we're quoting and surveying a stone surface, is a Mohs hardness rating. And this gives the stone a score for how hard that surface is. And the scale goes from 1, which is as tough as talcum powder, right the way through to 10, which is where you'll find diamond. Most of the limestones that we work with rate at about 2 to 4 on the Mohs hardness scale. And so this gives you a bit of an idea of what you need to think about when you're caring for stone. And that softness of the surface is something to have a plan for. And that's what we're going to come on to look at. Probably the most important fact to take away from today, and I say this with all seriousness, if you want to leave the webinar, I'd leave now. And if you learn nothing else, it's this, that a lot of stone, particularly marble, is very acid sensitive. And I could do a very small lesson in chemistry to explain this, but it's to do with the reaction of the calcium carbonate, all of those wonderful things that make up the stone. But essentially, when acid comes into contact, it's going to cause an instant, what we call an etch mark, which is essentially a burn mark on the stone, which you can't remove yourself. It's an instant impact. And we're going to look at how to protect your stone from that, and also why your stone is sealed as part of that as well, and hopefully give you a bit more insight into how to look after your stone despite that. So from what I've said so far, it might sound like stone is a really terrible choice for a floor, a worktop, or a bathroom. But despite everything that I've said, one of the really key and overarching properties of stone is its durability. You've only got to look at stone that is used throughout buildings all over the world, whether it's an internal stone flooring across the Vatican. We visited two Christmases ago, and probably the only people that walked around the Vatican looking down rather than up. Or whether it's the stone that we see, the beautiful marble that makes up some of the gorgeous buildings throughout London, the stunning marble and limestone buildings. They're durable. It's been there for years and years and years. So it's just about being aware of those properties and having a plan for both preventing damage from occurring and maintaining the stone from the minute that it is installed. And at this point, we're just going to take a very, very brief pause to look at sealants. And this is one of the big things that I want people to take away an understanding of is why stone is sealed and how it's sealed. So before and after installation, and as the final stage in all of the restoration and cleaning treatments that we provide, all stone surfaces are sealed. And this is to help protect the stone and to mitigate against some of the properties that we just mentioned. So sealing a stone surface doesn't make it bulletproof, but it's there to help prevent staining and extend the lifespan of that surface. It can also enhance the natural colour of the stone. And protection of stone can be broken down into two different types of sealants broadly. So an impregnating sealant penetrates into the stone and it binds to the capillaries to protect the stone from within. So if you remember, we talked about how porous the stone is. The idea of the impregnating sealant is that when things are dropped onto the stone, which inevitably does happen, or even just water as you walk through the house or in a bathroom, it's going to stop that from damaging the internal structure of the stone. So you're not going to be left with a deep set stain. It can leave the stone with a natural or a colour enhanced appearance, but it does leave the stone surface exposed, and that's something really important to understand. The idea is that it stops, as I say, it stops any surface damage from becoming deep set damage that would actually cause lasting impact to the stone. And there's a really good video on our YouTube channel, if I say so myself, which demonstrates the difference between when you pour water onto a sealed marble surface and an unsealed surface. And it gives you a really good idea of why it is that we pop an impregnating sealant into stone. On the other hand, you have what we call a surface sealant. And a surface sealant forms a physical barrier between the stone and the environment. So modern sealants are either wax or polymer based, and it can achieve a matte, a satin, or a gloss finish. Now, these sort of sealants are usually put on top of a riven textured floor or a floor, not on top of a highly polished floor. So that's the key thing to remember. You would not put a surface sealant on top of a highly polished marble floor or worktop, for example, because it just wouldn't bind. And it wouldn't be able to therefore bond sufficiently. And so these also can't be used on outdoor wet areas because, again, they would just become very slippery. So broadly, they're the two types of sealants. And contrary to popular belief, and this is probably the question I get asked most often by people, is how long does my sealant last? My stone's been sealed. When do I need it resealing? And contrary to popular belief, impregnating sealants do not degrade over time themselves. The pores and capillaries that were originally bound by that sealant will remain protected. But over time, through cleaning regimes and foot abrasion, more capillaries will open up within the stone. So if you remember, we sealed the stone initially to stop any spillages and staining from becoming deep set in the stone. As you start to open up more capillaries in the stone over time, you are going to see that sealant become slightly, not the sealant itself, but the impact will be less effective in a way. So you are going to want to have that stone resealed, and that usually happens after a clean or a restoration to remove any of the surface staining, scratching that exists. Surface sealants, on the other hand, are designed to be a sacrificial layer, and they're there to protect the stone from the external environment. So liquid spillages and abrasions will also impact that sealant, and they will be impacted by incorrect cleaning regimes too. So how long does a sealant last? It depends on so many different factors. It depends on the number of people and pets in the property. If you live in the beautiful Cotswold countryside with 3 dogs and 5 grandchildren coming around with muddy footprints all the time, it's going to be very, very different to if you live in central London and you only visit the property every couple of months. So it's really, really difficult to give people a guarantee on how long their sealant lasts. But as you start to notice more staining that's not as easy to wipe away, and you will start to notice your sealant degrading yourself. And so usually clients know when their stone needs to be sealed, and that's usually part of a maintenance or restoration program that they can put in place. So with everything that we now know about natural stone, we can take a look at the recommendations that we would give about how to care for it. And ultimately, we want to help extend the lifespan of that sealant so that it can do its job to protect the stone. So with each client that we see, we usually spend around half an hour discussing the exact cleaning regime that we'd recommend for their specific floor. The advice that we'd give somebody for 150 square metres of tumbled limestone who lives in the countryside is probably going to be a little bit different to somebody in central London, as we say. However, the basic principles are pretty much the same, and hence why we created our Athena Aftercare guide. It's a one-stop shop for really simple steps that anyone can follow to enjoy and love their natural stone for as long as possible. So there's a couple of things to bear in mind, and the first one is with dry cleaning. So stone flooring does not need to be wet cleaned every single day. And in fact, we would advise against it. It's really important though to regularly sweep the floor. And that's to remove the dust and debris that can easily scratch that vulnerable surface. So we do advise against using a vacuum cleaner because it can cause issues with scratching with any particles that have got trapped underneath it. And instead, we recommend sweeping the floor. It's actually much quicker and efficient, and it doesn't have that risk. Specifically, we recommend using what we call a Swiffer mop with a silicone malt net spray. So it's really, really simple to use. You spray some of the spray onto the end of the mop head and very lightly sweep across the floor. This isn't a scrub. This isn't anything that should take any energy. It's a really light sweep. And essentially the malt net spray along with the Swiffer mop is magnetic. It just draws all of those dust and debris before anyone can walk it across your floor. And an example I always give of this to kind of bring it to life, we had a client who had installed some travertine throughout their property. And at the stage we came in was about 2 years after it had been installed. They had a gravel driveway, and every single time somebody walked through the driveway and didn't take their shoes off, they were bringing these tiny, tiny little bits of grit. So they thankfully had installed a very good mat at the door. So the big chunks were gone, but little tiny little bits of grit were coming in. And they were getting caught underneath the door. And every time that door opened and closed, they created eventually a very deep gouge in the travertine. And there's some photos, I think, on our website of this. And it's for me a clear as day as an example, because all they would have had to do was a quick sweep every day, and that would never have happened. So I can't stress how important that just a quick daily sweep can make a huge, huge difference to your natural stone. The other side of looking after your natural stone is the wet cleaning. So no matter how well you sweep your floor, just like with anything, it's going to need a quick mop every now and again. And one of the tricks and our advice is to not over wet the floor. A lot of our clients in the past have caused damage to their natural stone by using a steam cleaner. So when mopping the floor, there's just a couple of really key things to bear in mind. And one of those things is about not letting the dirty water dry into your floor. So either do a fresh rinse clean with some fresh water afterwards, or we also recommend to clients that they can go around and actually physically dry their floor afterwards, especially if you've got a textural or ribbon floor or uneven grout lines, and that's where you're going to see that dirty water sitting. So it sounds really obvious, but actually it is something we really, really commonly see. So we recently completed a project in Marylebone, which we'll be able to share some more details on soon, but it was a very, very high-end hairdressers. And they had quite a lot of what we call lippage, so uneven grout lines. And every time they were cleaning the floor, it was the hairdressers that needed a good clean quite often. That dirty water was just sitting and pooling and actually making the grout discoloured. And it's so avoidable if you either make sure you're kind of getting all of that dirty water up, or we do have some clients with large areas who we do suggest buying a wet vacuum cleaner that you can just literally get all of that dirty water up off your floor after it's been mopped. The most important thing, and this goes for all stone, and particularly all stone actually, sorry, is that you should always use the right cleaning detergent. So we touched upon the fact that marble in particular is acid sensitive. A lot of household cleaners are not stone safe. And others might contain very highly alkaline ingredients, which can actually damage the sealant. So it is really, really important to use a pH neutral cleaning detergent. We recommend a range by Fila, and there are all of the links to the products that we recommend on our website. We don't sell them. We just like to make sure people have the right advice. So please do take a look at the product website on our product page on our website if you would like to take a look at any what we recommend. But just check the label, always make sure that it says pH neutral or stone safe. And this will emulsify the dirt without causing any damage to your sealant. We do also recommend for people with a wax finished floor, so if you remember we talked about some of those surface sealants and waxes, that they do periodically reapply that wax. Now, that's something I'm not going to go into detail here about because it is very much something that I would talk to the client themselves about, and we do have specific guides for clients who've got that wax finish, and I'm happy to kind of speak to anyone individually about what we recommend and how to reapply that wax, but that is something that we do recommend to clients, and it is well worth it if you have a wax finished floor. So I'm pleased to say that when it comes to bathrooms, the rules are exactly the same. The focus here is on the wet cleaning rather than sweeping. And most importantly, on keeping the stone surface as free from moisture as possible. So obviously we touched upon when you're wet cleaning a floor that you want to make sure it then is dried. And it's the same in a bathroom. The key here, and there's a couple of interesting kind of thoughts with a bathroom that I think people often don't consider. And the pH neutral cleaning products that we discussed on floors should actually apply to everything that you use within a bathroom. So it's worth bearing in mind that although you might not spray an acidic cleaner onto your bathroom marble, you should consider everything else that you're using to clean within your bathroom. So for example, bleach used for your toilet, if splashed around, will damage your marble. So it's worth just protecting the marble floor around your toilet if you are going to use bleach. And also things like the cleaning fluids used for glass and mirrors the old, I don't know what anyone else uses, but I still use the old vinegar trick that my mum taught me back in the day. But if you drip vinegar onto your marble, it will cause damage. So that it's really worth considering every single different thing that you're using within your bathroom. And also the things that you might, again, not think about, the soaps and cosmetics and perfumes that you might instinctively just pop down on a work surface in your bathroom. It's well worth making sure you've got a tray, a coaster, or a cupboard that you can put these on instead. I visited a client just last week, and she had a marble sink. And lined up on the marble sink was everything that she used. And you could just see this little pool around the bottom of them where things had dripped down the edge and had just started. And if you lifted them up, it had just etched the surface of the stone. So it's well worth just having a little extra thought. And it's just, again, it's nothing that's going to take a huge amount of energy or effort or investment of time or money. But it's, if you're going to have natural stone, there's just these couple of little extra things to think about to make sure that you don't cause any damage to it. And the other thing to be aware of with bathrooms, we've touched a bit on why you want to keep stone dry with regards to the porosity of stone. But there's also worth bearing in mind with stone in a bathroom, the impact that water itself can have. So most of us live in a hard water area, and the pH of the water is not exactly 7. And this means that if you constantly leave water dripping down a natural stone shower wall or sitting in a sink, then you'll start to see hard water deposits. And eventually this will etch the surface of your stone. And one thing that we see time and time again is people who have left the limescale to build up and then try to combat it, as we all do, by reaching for the Viacal or another branded limescale remover. Once you've sprayed that onto the stone surface, you cannot wipe it off. It's an instant etch. It's very damaging to stone. And so the best and easiest thing to do is, after everyone has taken a shower for the day, is squeegee down the walls, get all of the water that's sitting. Whereas you might not have to do that, you might not feel the need to do that with a porcelain or a ceramic tile. With a marble tile in a bathroom, it just needs a quick wipe down, get all of that water, don't leave it sitting there. And I can't stress that enough. It's something that we see so often. And just to bring this to life, this is probably one of the worst ones that we ever dealt with, which is, this isn't just limescale, I should point that out. This is where they've tried to combat their limescale by using Viacal. And it can be restored. That's the brilliant news. And as I say, because that stone was sealed, all that's happened is it's etched the surface. So as we discussed with the polished finish, it's got an impregnating sealant. So there was no damage to the internal structure of the stone. But that surface damage was something that cannot be wiped away yourself, and it needed to be restored. So the best thing to do is prevent that. And if you do, I mean, it is well worth bearing in mind that if you do have a silicone that's a bit dodgy in a bathroom or anywhere that water can actually get beneath your stone, there is always a risk with bathrooms of internal structure damage. But as I say, correctly sealed, it's only going to be surface damage, but you can avoid that surface damage just by ventilating your bathroom, investing in a water softener, and just wiping down the surfaces. It's as simple as that. And when it comes to worktops, it's essentially the same message. But there's a real split camp, I find, when it comes to materials that people want to use for a worktop. A lot of people opt for a quartz or a manufactured version of stone, and it's seen as being easier to care for. So there's an analogy that I always draw here, and this actually applies to everything we've discussed so far. And it's a little bit of a tangent, but I think we've got time for that. I don't own a Ferrari. Shockingly, I own a Kia. I've got a Kia because it's the most practical option for me. It's spacious, so my husband can fit his golf clubs in. And it's a lot more reliable than my 15-year-old Peugeot 107 was. Looks all right, but I didn't buy it for its aesthetic value. I just didn't really like breaking down. When I need my Kia cleaning, I take it to Sainsbury's, I park it up, I give the nice man £15, and I come back in an hour and it's a little bit cleaner, which is brilliant. If I'd bought a Ferrari, then I'd be investing in a luxury car. So when it needed cleaning, I'd take it to a specialist. I'd make sure I had the right products, I'd make sure it was done correctly, and I'd make sure it was spotless before I drove away. And I think this is the main point I always like to make with regards to all natural stone, but particularly worktops. If you're choosing a worktop that is natural stone, and particularly marble, it's like choosing to have a Ferrari. You've got to be prepared for the ongoing investment. And I met with a client 2 weeks ago who had a stunning marble worktop. And she'd chosen it with her eyes wide open about what to expect. She knew that it was vulnerable to acid staining, and she knew that it needed a little bit of love and care, but she also wanted to have that absolutely beautiful marble feature, and it can remain beautiful. So just like with your floors and your bathrooms, the key for worktops is to just regularly give it a quick clean. So only ever using pH neutral cleaners is absolutely essential with marble worktops. So again, we recommend Fila Brio, which is a product we use ourselves on our own work surfaces. And you can also regularly treat the surfaces with a product called Fila Refresh, which actually will enhance the stone and leave a very trace film to just help protect it a little bit as well. Marble is really acid sensitive, so the key is to keep the exposure to acid as minimal as possible. Now, in a kitchen, you've got your vinegars, you've got oils, you've got everything that you're cooking with. So if a spillage does occur, and they do, we've got a Nero Marquina dining table at home, and spillages happen. But the absolute key is to blot the spillage. So again, as we discussed, that spillage, that the instant surface damage has happened. It won't, and it shouldn't. If your stone is well sealed, it won't sink in and damage the stone any further. But if you wipe, then you're just going to wipe that acid across the surface of the stone. It's going to push that further across your work surface and cause a bigger mark than what you had before. So it's always really wise to just blot anything that is spilt onto your marble worktop. And that's one of the most important things that I can suggest. And there's not going to be anything you can do to remove an etch mark yourself. But as I say, the prevention that we've discussed already is still key with worktops. But there is that just extra careful, because you will spill things inevitably. So just blot them would be our main advice. And there's another interesting thought that we do, I think is really, really relevant with regards to worktops. And we've recently had a run of clients who've got marble worktops and tables who've actually chosen to have them homed. So on the left here, you've actually got the before photograph. You can just about make out a couple of the etch marks on the stone. And as we were restoring the stone, the client walked in when we had it at a home stage. So we'd already ground the stone, we'd removed all of the etch marks and scratches, and we were refinishing it at this stage. Now, all refinishing starts with honing and then a series of finer abrasives to get a polished finish. The client walked in and absolutely fell in love with what the stone looked like at this point. And so actually chose to keep it like that. Now, it is not necessarily a harder surface. There's a great video we shot a couple of weeks ago with Sophie Paston, and I think Larissa might share the YouTube link for that as well. And there's a really great clip where Dave explains the actual mechanical process between polished and honed, and actually what that does to the structure of the stone. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but from a purely maintenance perspective, one of the key things I think, and our clients have experienced with a honed surface, is because it doesn't reflect the light the same, you're not going to notice those dull and etch marks as easily. And we've certainly done this. As I say, we have a slab of Nero Marquina on top of our dining table. I actually prefer what it looks like honed personally. And when it was polished originally, you could kind of tell the story of who's the messiest eater by the etch marks from the lemon I'd squeezed and it had gone everywhere, or the glass of wine we'd knocked over. With it honed, you really, really cannot tell as much. If you walked into our living room, you'd look at it and go, oh, it's a beautiful piece of stone. You wouldn't look at it and notice all of these splodges and marks. So it's well worth considering with your clients, if they do want to have marble, whether or not a honed finish might be more practical. We've done this for a lot of clients recently, and if they change their mind, it can be polished again at a later date. So it's something to really, really consider with clients to help make the maintenance as easy as possible. And this actually brings me really nicely on to just a few final thoughts before we come on to questions. And I do think that when you are specifying stone and installing stone and talking to clients about stone, it's well worth having these conversations about the upkeep of stone from the beginning, so they're really aware of the little things they're going to have to do, not to put them off, but to equip them with the right tools to make the decision. Like with the Ferrari and the Kia, it might not be for everybody, but some people, lots of people have stunning stone throughout their properties. And the great thing is that no matter what you do, no matter what colour scheme you go for next, natural stone is always going to be in fashion. We had a client just a couple of months ago who, actually we have a lot of clients where they get us in to resurface and restore their stone just after they renovated their kitchen. So they've changed their cupboards, their colour scheme, their handles, their lighting, but the natural stone is still on trend. And it does stand the test of time. When looked after properly, it's a durable material. So as a design choice, it's a really, really savvy one. It's sustainable. It is easy to look after if you know how. But there's a few things you can do to make your clients' lives even easier, whether it's a honed worktop or actually considering the finish on a floor as well. So if you consider a highly polished floor, as you walk through, you're going to start to see some of those duller marks where people have been walking regularly. So it's well worth considering as a highly polished finish, the best finish for a floor. Obviously, slip resistance and that side of things aside, if we're looking at it purely from an aesthetic point of view, actually it's going to be much more practical to have a honed or a satin finish to a floor, where you don't have to worry so much about who's walking what through where, and you're going to have to invest less in professional maintenance. A lot of our clients who we see for ongoing maintenance what we tend to do is focus a deeper restorative treatment on some of the higher traffic areas and then feather it out into the lower traffic areas to get an even finish on their floor. But it's less necessary and there's less aggressive grinding needed if the floor's not been heavily stained and there's no kind of polished finish, and it can make it a lot easier for the clients to maintain. So I do think there's some really simple things to consider with clients to help them to get the best from their stone, and that's what we're all about. Is we want clients to get the best from their stone forever. We do truly believe it's an investment, and we do truly believe that stone can endure and look elegant, and it's timeless and classical, and we really want to help spread that message. So it has been a bit of a whistle-stop tour, and I really hope that that's given you a bit of an insight into stone and how you could guide your clients to make some informed choices. There's so much more we could share. I will share our aftercare guides with you all afterwards, and any of the links as well to the information that we've mentioned. I'm going to touch on a couple of the questions we were asked in advance, and then I'm going to ask Larissa if we've got anything in the chat bar as well. Having a quick look through, it doesn't look like we have, so she might have had some sent personally. So one of the questions that we were asked by somebody was where the best place to buy a floor polisher is. So in terms of the floor machinery that we use ourselves, all of our equipment is from Clindex. So that's an Italian brand. We purchase it all from Tiling Logistics. There are lots of other options available. But Tiling Logistics is also the place we get all the products from. So if you do have a look at any of the products that we've recommended on our website, it will take you through to the Tiling Logistics webpage. So anybody who might be interested in purchasing anything, it's all there. Somebody asked in advance as well the best method, to apply sealer on a polished Italian marble. All the marbles are available. So the best way to apply sealant yourself is using a microfiber cloth. You will have seen lots of photographs during the presentation of the boys applying sealants, and we do this using microfiber pads. There's no need to go and purchase this yourself, especially if you're looking for a worktop, which is most often where people are reapplying sealer. So we would suggest just spraying a little bit of you need a mist sprayer, so a pump sprayer, spray it directly onto your stone, and then use a microfiber cloth just to wipe it in. And then if it is a polished surface, you'll want to buff that surface afterwards as well, just to remove the residue. I've probably made that sound more complicated. We are going to do a how-to video on that at some point. I was asked about that just yesterday. It actually is a lot more intuitive than I've just made it sound. So we will do a nice video on that, because I think it's a better way to demonstrate. We were also asked in advance, is there any solutions to remove stains, and how regularly should marble be maintained? So I know we've discussed some of the stains that you can't remove yourselves, like etch marks. There are specific stain removers and problem solvers available for things like oil and organic stains. So we again use these products ourselves. So for example, if we do go to a property, we've actually got one we're going to next week, which if I had the time to tell the story, I would, because it's unbelievable. But this lady has an oil stain across her floor. So there are specific stain removers that we use. And so yeah, the feeler products are the ones that we would recommend that you use yourselves if you're going to do that as well. And then somebody also asked if we sell repair kits for filling holes or cleaning natural stone. So again, all the products we've recommended for cleaning are on the product page on our website. In terms of repair kits for filling holes, we don't recommend you do that yourself. We do this. There are repair kits available, and I know there are repair kits available, but we just don't recommend trying that yourself at home. So we're more than happy to come in and talk about kind of spot repairs that we can do ourselves for you, and that is part and parcel of the restoration process that we would provide, would be to fill holes and do any minor repairs as well. So Larissa, do we have any questions? We've probably got about 10 minutes or so. If anyone does need to shoot off, then please do. We won't be offended. But we've got a couple of questions, I think, Larissa, if you want to run through those.
Oh, good morning. Yes, we've had 5 questions through. So I'm just going to go through each of them. The first was, if you go from a polish to a matte finish, can you then revert back to a polish?
Absolutely. So it's really worth bearing in mind. Well, the simple answer is yes. So no matter what finish you choose for your stone, it's not the end result. So if we've polished your natural stone and then you decide you don't want it polished anymore, we would have to strip back and regrind it in order to hone it, because it has been sealed. And it's the same with home. So if we've honed your stone, so for example, my worktop that we've honed, I couldn't just pop along now and go to the next stage of diamonds because it's been sealed. So we'd need to strip that sealant back and rehone it before polishing it again. But essentially, yes, you can change your mind as many times as you like with regards to the finish.
Okay, perfect. And we've also been asked what areas of the UK we cover.
So we are based in Buckinghamshire, and we cover London and the home counties. And I say that very, very loosely. Most of our work is Buckinghamshire and the surrounding counties, Oxfordshire, Surrey, Berkshire, Hertfordshire, Middlesex and London. But we do go down onto the south coast as well. So we do cover West Sussex, Hampshire, and we dabble in Kent and Essex, but we don't go much further north than Hertfordshire and North Bucks.
Yeah, and somebody has asked whether this advice can be applied to terracotta.
Yes, so terracotta for me, along with other non-natural stone surfaces, we would you can be a little bit more aggressive with regards to the cleaning regime. So this is actually covered in our aftercare guide. It's not you don't need to worry as much with regards to the acid sensitivity, and so it's not quite as much of a we would definitely still recommend I think for a terracotta floor, doing that dry sweeping is so important for any floor actually. But you don't need to worry too much about the acid sensitivity. But you do have to think about the sealants with regards to terracotta. So I think it was Candice that asked that. And so I can get a bit more information about terracotta specifically, and actually it's probably worth us putting together a guide specifically on terracotta, because it can behave a little bit, it's not quite the same as your ceramics and porcelains. So yeah, that's actually quite a good question, and I will probably look to put a guide together for that specifically. So thank you, Candice.
And then 2 more. So one of the questions is silicone spray that we recommend. Can that be used if you already have feeler matte or feeler satin on your floor?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so they're they are the finishing waxes. So yeah, absolutely. The spray, as I say, it's the idea is to spray it onto the mop head. And as I say, it just acts like a magnet for the dust and dirt. So it's not a cleaning spray. It's not about this. This is your dry cleaning, your dry sweeping. So you're not here trying to clean off the dirt, as in kind of ingrained staining and like if you've got muddy footprints, for example, your silicone malt net spray and Swiffer isn't the thing. You are going to need a wet clean for that. This is about your daily cleaning to get rid of the little bits of dust and dirt that get tread through your house every day. So yeah, it's spray it on the mop pad, and it's like a magnet. It's magic stuff. And as I say, it can be used on any finish.
Perfect. And then the last question was, would you suggest a home finish for a bathroom floor too?
Yeah, I mean, with bathroom floors, it's there's all sorts to take into consideration with regards to slip resistance as well. So you want to be considering the format of the tiles, not just the finish. As we don't install natural stone ourselves, I would suggest that is something you discuss with your stone supplier and your architect and whoever else is installing that stone and involved in the project, because there is a little bit more to be taken into consideration than just the finish. So you want to look at the format and the size of the tiles and other things like that. So I would kind of say that's something to discuss with your supplier first and foremost, as they will be able to advise a little bit further on that.
Amazing. Well, that's everything, unless anyone else has any questions. I think we're all good. Everyone's just saying thank you.
Brilliant. Oh, well, thank you all so much for joining us. As I say, we will follow up afterwards, and it's something we're so passionate about, caring for stone. As much as what we do is professional care and restoration, from my point of view, we want to make sure that everyone knows how to care for the stone from the moment it's installed. So thank you everyone so much. What we'll do is we'll just close down the Zoom so that you don't need to kind of feel the need to leave slowly but surely. But thank you so much, and we will be following up with everybody. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. If you're heading to the Surface Design Show, you are in for a fantastic day. I went last night and I am actually gutted not to be going for the next 2 days. So have a brilliant time, and see you all soon.